Using more than 10 million shells a year while manufacturing only 1 million, and losing 2,500 tanks a year while having the capability to produce only 200 new ones. Things are not looking good for Russia. How many tanks does Russia actually have left? Are all the tanks that were sustainable for battle gone, or does Putin have more of them on Russia's secret depots? With recent shifts in tank numbers between Ukraine and Russia, you might be surprised how the situation has evolved. We're gonna take a look at the numbers, how many has each country received and lost, and how both countries are trying to adapt to the changing battlefield. If you're keen on keeping up with the latest developments in this high-stakes geopolitical chess game, you don't want to miss this. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Recent information indicates that Ukraine might now have more tanks prepared for combat than Russia. This is the first time since the beginning of Russia's large-scale invasion. Last year, Ukraine lost all of its own tanks on the battlefield, but during the last months, Ukraine's tank numbers have grown due to support from their Western friends. Meanwhile, Russia has lost many tanks and is finding it difficult to produce new ones. And as for any possible donations from other countries, that's not even discussable. Unless China, North Korea, or some other countries that Russia tries to keep good relationships with send them any tanks. But even if they do send them, those tanks haven't seen modern warfare, so we're not sure how they would perform in Ukraine. So, with all this said, it makes us wonder about the number of tanks Russia currently possesses, how many they might send to Ukraine, and after a year of battling the strong armed forces of Ukraine, how many tanks Russia really has left. New numbers show that Ukraine has about 1,500 tanks ready for battle, while Russia has nothing more than 1,400. People who study military matters believe that in February 2022, when the invasion began, Russia had about 3,400 tanks, and they were good to go in battle. They also had between 8,000 and 10,000 tanks kept in storage, but keep in mind that those numbers were given from official Russian reports, so we cannot be sure if Russians really had 10,000 reserve tanks back then. On the other hand, Ukraine had only about 1,000 tanks at that time, or if we want to be more precise, 987 tanks exactly. Since February 2022, the situation with tanks has changed a lot for Ukraine and Russia. The reason why Ukraine now has more tanks than Russia, who was considered to be the big guy of tanks, it's all due to Western aids. The tanks the Western countries are supplying Ukraine with are not just any tanks. Most of these are German Leopard 2 tanks, but there are also some American M1A3 Abrams and British Challenger 2 tanks. And one other important factor that has helped Ukraine outnumber Russia with tanks is the ability to get the enemy vehicle without destroying it, and actually start using it against them. A Dutch group that studies the military thinks Ukraine has lost 560 tanks, but has also taken nearly that many, 544 from Russia. Things aren't looking good for Russia, according to a Dutch research group, where it's mentioned that Russia started the large invasion with about 3,400 tanks and has lost at least 2,100 of them for various reasons. With Western countries putting financial pressure on Russia and slowing down its ability to produce more tanks, numbers from the statistics are saying that Russia can potentially have from 1,000 to 1,500 tanks, nothing more than that. The Dutch group's estimates may not capture all the losses because they only count tanks that have been confirmed lost through photos or other reliable sources. Russia keeps the actual number of their lost tanks in Ukraine a secret, as well as how many new ones they can produce. There's no solid information on how many new tanks Russia has manufactured or taken out of storage. One of the top UK military leaders, Tony Radakin, mentioned that Russia has lost nearly half of its army's fighting power. He also stated that Russia used up 10 million artillery shells last year, but can only manufacture 1 million shells a year. He said Russia has lost 2,500 tanks and can only produce about 200 new ones each year. With this information made public, Putin should be the one to initiate negotiations for peace, because the Russian army cannot sustain a prolonged war in Ukraine for more than 1 or 1.5 years. In April, Russian news reported that Russia sent its advanced T-14 Armata tank to fight in Ukraine. There were doubts before about whether this tank would be used in actual combat, since they didn't know if they would even start. This tank has special features. It has a turret that can be controlled remotely, strong armor made of different materials, and a system that can automatically defend against missiles and enemy tank shells. Its main gun can shoot missiles and hit targets up to 8 kilometers away. Was Putin really about to send those old rusty pieces into a dogfight with the top US, UK, and German tanks? However, despite its powerful features, the T-14 Armata hasn't shown a significant effect on the Ukraine conflict yet. Let the T-14 Armatas alone. Recently, people have shared videos on social media showing old tanks, some even from World War II, being transported to Ukraine. One recent video showed old Russian T-54 or 55 tanks moving towards the area of Crimea. At first, experts thought that Russia would fix these old tanks and add new parts to make them better before sending them to battle, but it seems that the T-54 and 55 tanks that showed up in Ukraine didn't get any upgrades. They were sent as they were, without any of the special protections that some newer versions from the 1980s and 1990s have.
Мне кажется, они одинаковые, нет?
Одинаковые.
The old T-54 and T-55 tanks might not be used the way modern tanks are usually used in battles. Instead, they could be more helpful if they are set up as stationary gun spots. Russia could dig these tanks into the ground so that only the top part with the gun sticks out. A strategy that has been used before with non-totally destroyed vehicles. Another way these tanks could be useful is by acting like extra artillery. They could stay a bit behind the front lines and help by shooting at targets from a distance. This would give more support to the Russian soldiers who are moving forward. Another interesting point is about the kind of bullets these tanks use. As Russia may be running low on regular artillery bullets, these old tanks use a special kind of 100mm bullet. This bullet can explode and send pieces flying, making it useful against both vehicles and people. They also have rounds that are good for destroying other tanks. So, while these tanks are old and don't have the modern features that newer tanks have, they could still be useful in different ways. This is especially true if Russia is trying to defend an area or needs extra artillery support. That wraps up today's video. What do you think about the current situation? Do you believe the numbers, or do you think there's more to the story we're not seeing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear your opinions. And if you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis. Thanks for watching.